Good morning. This is Ron, and it is Monday, January 29th, 2018. Welcome to Story Time. Good morning again. This is Ron, and this is the one of my little Storytime extras. And today, what I wanted to discuss was the along the lines of the Black Lives Matter issue and issues, I suppose. Long time ago, decades ago, I used to listen to a comedian, Steve Martin, and one of the things he came up with is he had a great idea. He said for solving the overpopulation problem, and that was the death penalty for parking violations. And he didn't realize, I think, at the time when he said that he was not just making a joke, but basically a prediction. Because today we have a situation where people are getting the death penalty, if not for parking violations, for equally trivial reasons. You look at, and I think decades ago, if you had told me that somebody could be shot to death by a police officer because they were looking for their concealed carry license, I would say you're out of your mind. If you told me decades ago that somebody could be shot to death stepping outside their home and just letting their hand get somewhere near their waistband, I tell you, you're out of your mind. These kinds of things are happening on a regular basis, where basically what you have is the people that, yes, are perhaps disobeying the lawful order of a police officer, but that doesn't mean they deserve the death penalty. And that's, in essence, what they get. They get shot to death. The officer goes off scot-free. No trial, nothing. And I like to believe that that's at the root or at the heart of what's going on in terms of the outrage. It's outrageous to me that police officers can kill people blatantly violent. Here's another example just occurred to me, was the one in South Carolina, one of the most egregious examples, which was on camera where a police officer pulled somebody over for a traffic stop. The individual runs and the police officer shoots him in the back simply because the police officer was too lazy to chase him. And the police officer got a hung jury. A hung jury. It was on videotape. To the credit of the police department, the officer was immediately fired. To the credit of the district attorney, the officer was immediately charged and put on trial for first-degree murder, as it should have been. He should have been. And as a sort of an aside here, by the way, not one police union representative stood up and said what a horrible, ugly, nasty thing that officer did. Not one. Not one police union person stood up and said that this officer should be fired immediately, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and should spend the rest of his life in prison. Not one. And that's also outrageous. So, again, the individual in South Carolina lost his life, was shot to death for a traffic violation. Death penalty for a traffic violation. And you see this, again, there was the individual, I think it was maybe in Oklahoma or Minnesota, who had a concealed carry permit. Officer pulls him over. The individual tells the officer, yes, I have a gun in the car, but I have a permit. Let me find it for you. And the officer puts 5 rounds into him, which is another issue, a kind of a side issue. It's one thing to shoot the person and shoot them once, right? I would think that's what you would do. You shoot them once and then see if the threat, if such as it is, stops. But it seems that the officers are in the habit of emptying their weapons, or at least putting half a clip into whoever it is they're shooting, because that individual that was simply looking for his license was shot, I believe, 5 or 6 times. And again, the officer, as far as I know, there was an investigation, and the officer, as a matter of fact, I think that the officer may have gone on trial for manslaughter or some other crime, and was exonerated, was found not guilty. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And part of the reason that happens is because police unions are powerful enough that they have enough money to influence political elections and political outcomes, so they can get the powers that be to write special laws. So in other words, if you or I went ahead and shot Michael Brown, for instance, the way he was shot by a police officer, we'd be sitting in state or federal penitentiary right now. And we'd be lucky if we ever got a chance to get parole. The officer in question was not prosecuted, wasn't even fired. He eventually quit the police department, saying that he didn't want to put the community through, extra pain or whatever. Acting like he's being very magnanimous about it, like he was perfectly innocent, and but he's going to go ahead and be magnanimous and make a nice gesture for the community and go ahead and resign. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. There was no reason to kill Michael Brown, absolutely none. But it happened anyhow. If I had done it, if you had done what that officer had done, we'd be in prison right now. He is gone scot-free because they changed the laws, the unions do, so that police officers don't have to meet the same standards as a regular citizen. The only standard the police officer has to meet is they have to say, I feared for my life or safety. And on their word alone, they can be exonerated or immune from prosecution. And so you're creating a two-tiered system in terms of citizenship. You have the regular citizens like you and I, and then you have the super citizens, the police officers, who get to, in some cases, do whatever they feel like. They get to do whatever they think is right at that time, and they don't have to suffer the consequences. So, again, and the only way it's going to stop, the only way it's going to end, is to decertify all police unions. All public employee unions should be decertified, as a matter of fact. And the reason they should be is because they are inherently corrupt, and they're corrupt because of an inherent conflict of interest. You cannot work for say that you're serving the community and serve yourself at the same time. That's a conflict of interest, and conflict of interest is at the heart of corruption. And so, having a police unions is corrupt. It has to go. And the police officers should return to civil servant status as they used to be years ago. And that will go a long ways towards putting to an end, because the real issue here is the ability of the police officers to apparently operate with impunity, to commit crimes and walk away scot-free. And the only way that's going to end is to end and decertify police unions. So that's my little story time extra for today. Tomorrow, I'm going to be reading an article from Imprimis, The Left's War on Free Speech. Until then, thank you very much for joining me. Have a great day.